What would you know about breaking codes, old woman? The question stopped Margaret Hayes mid-step. At 96, she was carrying a stack of books to the history section, moving slowly but steadily through the library's quiet aisles. Dylan Carter stood near the computer terminals, laptop open. His startup team gathered around him. They were here for a town hall meeting about modernizing the library, which really meant shutting it down and replacing it with a tech center. Seriously, Dylan continued, his voice rising. We're talking about encryption algorithms, machine learning, AI-powered pattern recognition, the future of information security, and you're still using a Dewey Decimal System. He gestured at the card catalog cabinet in the corner. You probably don't even know what encryption is. Margaret set down her books. Carefully, quietly. Her hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from something else. A memory trying to surface after 79 years of being buried. Encryption, Margaret said, her voice soft but clear, is the process of converting information into code to prevent unauthorized access. Dylan smirked. Wikipedia definition. Good job. Enigma, Margaret continued, her eyes distant now, was a German cipher machine. Rotor-based. 3 rotors in most models. 5 in the Naval version. 158 million possible settings. The smirk faded from Dylan's face. His friends, Sarah Chun, Tyler Brooks, Josh Martinez, all froze. Sarah leaned forward. Wait, how do you know so much about Enigma? Every day, Margaret's voice grew stronger. At midnight, the settings would change. And she stopped, corrected herself. We had 24 hours to break that day's code, or all the messages would be unreadable. Tyler lowered his phone. Hold on. Did you say we? As in you. Margaret set the books on the counter. For the first time in 40 years of being head librarian, she sat down during working hours. Her hands still trembled. 1942, Margaret said quietly. I was 19 years old, studying mathematics at Cambridge. And one day, a man came. Professor Gordon Welchman. He asked me one question. Are you good with numbers, young lady? The library had gone completely silent. 3 patrons, retired teacher Catherine Morris, a truck driver, a young college student, all stopped, listening. Dylan crossed his arms, still skeptical. So you're saying you were a codebreaker? In World War II? At Bletchley Park? HUD 8, Margaret nodded. On Alan Turing's team. Sarah's mouth dropped open. Alan Turing? The Alan Turing. Back then, Margaret smiled faintly. He was just a peculiar, brilliant mathematician. His social skills were terrible. He couldn't tie a proper tie. But his mind was a miracle. In the corner, Catherine Morris slowly closed her book. She was 78 years old. Her father had been lost in 1943 in the Atlantic on a convoy ship. His body was never found. Just a missing certificate. Catherine pulled out her phone, quietly started recording. Miss Hayes had been the librarian for 40 years. Quiet. Kind. Never complaining. But now a door was opening. Prove it, Dylan said, still disbelieving. If you were really at Bletchley, prove it. Margaret stood, walked to her office. A minute later, she returned with an old folder. Yellowed papers. Ancient photographs. She set the folder on the counter, opened it. The first page, an official document, dated 1942. Official Secrets Act at the top. Margaret's signature, young and neat, at the bottom. Dylan leaned in. This is real. Second page, a photograph. A young woman, 19 or 20 years old, long hair, smiling, with a group of people in front of an old mansion. Behind them, a sign, Station X. Station X, Margaret said, was Bletchley Park's code name. And this is me. 1943, age 20. Sarah took the photo, looked at elderly Margaret. The resemblance was undeniable. Those sharp eyes, that determined chin. My God, Sarah whispered. This is real. You were actually there. Margaret sat down, took a deep breath. The wall of 79 years had crumbled. And now, for the first time, she would speak. When Professor Welchman came, Margaret began, her voice distant, remembering. He was sitting in a Cambridge cafe. I'd just finished my mathematics final exam. I'd done well. Top marks. And he found me. Margaret closed her eyes, seeing the scene. Miss Hayes, he said, we need your talent. For the war effort. But I can't tell you what for. And you can't tell anyone. Not even your family. I was 19 years old. Terrified. But I said yes. Tyler was taking notes. Josh was still recording. 2 weeks later, Margaret continued. I boarded a train. To Bletchley Station. And from there, a truck took me to a mansion. Large. Old. Victorian. But it wasn't beautiful. It was grim. Margaret opened her eyes. First day, they gave me a tour. Hut 3, Hut 6, Hut 8. Each hut, a different code. Hut 8. Hut 8 was Naval Enigma. U-boats. Convoys. The most critical. Dylan was now fully attentive. The arrogance was gone. When I first met Alan touring, Margaret smiled faintly. He was eating an apple. With the skin on. And without speaking, he handed me a paper. A problem on it. Mathematical. Solve this, he said. By lunch. Could you? Sarah asked. Yes. In 1 hour. Margaret's eyes brightened. When Alan came back, he was surprised. You're fast, he said. You can stay. Catherine, in the corner, smiled. She was crying but smiling. She'd always wondered about her father. How did he die? How was he lost? And now maybe there were answers. Enigma, Margaret said, her voice now taking on a teaching tone, was a work of genius. The Germans would set the rotors every morning, configure the plug board, choose the starting position. And these settings were in daily code books. Only officers had them. So how did you break it? Tyler asked. Cribs, Margaret answered. Predicted text fragments. For example, every morning at 6 o'clock, a weather report would come. Always the same format. Weather. And we knew that word would be in the message. Dylan frowned. But there are still millions of combinations. Yes, but there's the bomb machine. Margaret nodded. Designed by Alan. Electrical. Huge. Simulates rotors, tests settings. Using the crib, we'd reduce millions to thousands. Then we'd run the bomb. Margaret stopped, remembering. Hours, she whispered. Sometimes days. The bomb would spin, click, test. And we'd wait, pray, hope. Because every minute mattered. Every message might be a U-boat position. Maybe a convoy route. Maybe thousands of lives. No one in the library spoke. Only Margaret's voice and the soft wind from outside. March 1943, Margaret's voice broke. The worst month. U-boat attacks were at their peak. Every day, convoy ships were sinking. Hundreds of sailors dying. Because we couldn't break that month's naval enigma. Catherine's tears slid down her cheeks. March 1943, the month her father was lost. For weeks, Margaret said, we didn't sleep. Shifts. 12 hours. Sometimes 18. All of Hut 8. Alan, me, Peter Twin, Joan Clark, Gordon. All of us. Joan Clark, Sarah whispered. From the movie. Keira Knightley played her. Yes, Margaret nodded. Joan was my closest friend. Another woman mathematician. We understood each other. Because the men didn't want to believe in us. But Alan did. Margaret smiled, sad. March 27th, 3:47 a.m. I was on shift. The bomb stopped. It had found a result. I ran, checked it. Woke Joan. Together, we ran the decoder. And it worked. We'd broken that day's code. Margaret looked up, tears in her eyes. That morning, she said, voice trembling, we decrypted 15 U-boat positions. Sent them to the Navy. And that day, not a single convoy was sunk. Catherine stood, walked to the counter. Miss Hayes, she said, voice breaking. My father was lost in March 1943. In the Atlantic. HMS Pembroke. But he was lost on March 28th. The day after you. Margaret looked at Catherine. HMS Pembroke. Yes. Margaret closed her eyes, trying to remember. HMS Pembroke. It was in that convoy. HX 229. Yes. I remember. March 28th. We broke that day's code too. But too late. The attack was in the morning. We broke it in the afternoon. Catherine cried. So you tried. You tried to save him. We tried to save everyone, Margaret whispered. But we couldn't save them all. The two elderly women embraced, cried. The library was silent. Dylan and his friends watched, respectfully. A few minutes later, Margaret continued. After the war, she said, the Official Secrets Act continued. 50 years. We couldn't speak until 1995. And in 1995, the Bletchley files were opened. But by then, I was 72. And silence had become a habit. Why now? Dylan asked, his voice soft. Why did you speak today? Margaret looked at him. Because you asked me, what would you know about breaking codes? And after 79 years, it was time to answer. Dylan bowed his head. I'm sorry, Miss Hayes. I was a fool. No, Margaret shook her head. You just didn't know? How could you? I never told anyone. The next hour, the library filled. Catherine posted the video on social media. The news spread. Veterans came. Historians. University professors. Journalists. Students. A historian, Dr. Emily Norton, arrived, a Bletchley Park expert. When she saw Margaret, she fell to her knees. Miss Hayes, Emily said, crying. I've studied Bletchley for years. I know your name. In the records. But I didn't know you were still alive. Margaret smiled. I lived quietly. Emily pulled out files. Records say you were in Hut 8 from 1942 to 1945. 47 successful Enigma breaks. Direct contribution. This is incredible. Dylan, now completely humbled, stood. Miss Hayes, what can I do? How can I make this right? Margaret looked at him. You can save this library. 2 weeks later, the city council held an emergency meeting. Dylan Carter gave a speech. But this time, it was different. I made a mistake, Dylan said, voice low. I made assumptions about Margaret Hayes. Because of her age. Because of technology. But the truth is this woman helped save the world. And I couldn't see it. Dylan presented. My proposal, we don't close the library. We refinance it. And we add a new section, the Margaret Hayes STEM Center. For young girls. Coding, mathematics, science. Because Margaret taught me something. True intelligence works quietly. And our job is to support it. The council approved unanimously. The library was saved. Margaret Hayes passed away 2 years later, at 98, in her sleep. No pain. Peaceful. Her funeral was held at the library. Hundreds came. Dylan and his team. Catherine and her family. Dr. Norton. 2 former Bletchley codebreakers. Veterans. Students. Dylan gave a speech. Margaret Hayes taught me 3 things, he said, eyes wet. First, age is just a number. True wisdom comes with experience. Second, technology is just a tool. Real power is in the human mind. Third, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the quietest ones. In the library, a new plaque was mounted. Margaret Hayes 1923 to 2023, Bletchley Park Codebreaker. Hut 8 Alan Turing Team, helped end World War II 2 years early, saved countless lives, never spoke. Until she did. And a new section opened. Margaret Hayes STEM Center. For young girls, mathematics, coding, science. Free. Every day, girls look at that plaque, read it, find inspiration. Margaret's voice, quietly, echoes. Now it's your turn. This story of Margaret Hayes reminds us that brilliance doesn't always announce itself with credentials or noise. Who is the silent genius in your life? Maybe it's a grandmother who never finished school but solved problems no one else could. A quiet coworker who fixes what everyone else breaks. A neighbor who understands things deeply but never shows off. Or maybe it's you, carrying knowledge the world hasn't recognized yet. Tell us in the comments below. Share their name. Share what they built in silence. Let's honor the hidden minds that shaped our world. And if this story moved you, hit that like button to honor Margaret and all Bletchley Park heroes. Subscribe to Echoes of Valor for more untold World War II stories. Share this with someone who needs to remember that genius doesn't always wear a lab coat. Tomorrow, we have another story from the greatest generation. One that will remind you that the most powerful minds are often the quietest. Until then, remember Margaret's words. 158 million possible settings. And we broke it in 24 hours, every single day, for 3 years. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. And thank you for honoring the silent mathematicians, the forgotten women, the unsung minds that cracked the unbreakable and saved the world. We'll see you in the next story.